I went there to learn how to seduce. And I came out more broken than I was before. He said he saw a play in my eyes. And then I realized that I had lost myself. Hi. My name's Samantha. And no, I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who signs up for something called Goddess Seduction Bootcamp. Just saying that out loud sounds like a bad joke from a late-night infomercial. Like something you'd see at 2 a.m., sandwiched between protein blender ads and car insurance promises. But I wasn't laughing when I clicked it. I was lying on my apartment floor, lights off, phone glowing above me like a tiny sun I didn't deserve. The divorce papers were still sitting unopened on the coffee table. I'd received them 4 days ago. I couldn't bring myself to read the language they used, cold, indifferent, full of phrases like irreconcilable differences and dissolution of union. It felt like a business transaction. Like someone had shut the lights off on my life and just walked away. I hadn't cried in 2 weeks. Not because I was strong. Because I was numb. And then Jason ghosted me. He wasn't anyone important, not in the grand scheme. Just a maybe. A sliver of hope I dared to entertain after everything fell apart. We'd gone on 4 dates. He bought me wine and held my hand like it meant something. He told me he was divorced too, that he got it. That I was refreshing. That I had depth. I should have known then. Depth is what they say when they like the sound of your pain but not the reality of it. One morning I texted him a picture of the sunrise. Just something dumb and vulnerable. A little wish you were here, disguised as a look at this view. He never responded. Not that day. Not ever again. So when I saw the ad on Instagram, I was already in that mood. You know, the mix of sad and angry that turns women into danger. Turn heartbreak into power. Learn how to seduce, command, and control. The text was overlaid on a photo of a woman in red. She wasn't smiling. She looked hungry. Powerful. Like she'd already been through the worst and come out on the other side with fangs. The kind of woman who didn't cry in bathrooms. The kind of woman who didn't text sunrises to men who disappear. I clicked. I paid. I didn't tell anyone. The workshop was 3 weeks long. Downtown. In a rented loft space that smelled like incense and old ambition. On day 1 we sat in a circle, 10 women including me and one instructor named Callista. That wasn't her real name, obviously. She said we needed rebirth names. That Samantha was the woman who got cheated on, lied to, left behind. But the woman I was becoming? She would have a name like fire. A name like vengeance. Call me Ember, I said, not knowing where the name came from. Just that it sounded like something smoldering, not yet dangerous, but close. The others were all different kinds of broken. A woman whose fiancé left her a month before the wedding. Another who found her husband's second phone in the glove compartment. A single mom who hadn't been touched in years and said it like a confession, not a complaint. Callista told us we weren't victims anymore. That we had the power now. That seduction wasn't manipulation, it was reclamation. Of worth. Of identity. Of control. She told us how to walk into a room like we owned the air. How to use pauses in conversation like weapons. How to make eye contact just long enough to destabilize. It felt like acting at first. But the thing is, I was good at it. And I didn't know if that scared me or thrilled me more. By the end of the first week, I barely recognized the way I moved. There was something addictive about it, like slipping into a costume, but realizing the costume fit. They taught us how to hold ourselves like a secret someone wanted to solve. How to sit with one leg crossed just so to expose the curve of a thigh without making it obvious. How to speak in a lower register because breathy voices made men lean in closer. But it wasn't just about men. It was about winning. Callista said we'd been programmed since birth to believe our value came from being chosen, from being picked, loved, married. She said that kind of thinking was poison and the cure was to become the chooser. To look at a room full of men and say, which of you is worthy of me? I wrote that in my journal. Word for word. Then I stared at the sentence for 10 minutes, trying to figure out if I believed it. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Every night after class, I'd take off my makeup and stare into the mirror like it owed me something. I started noticing things I hadn't seen in years, the sharpness of my cheekbones, the way my eyes looked almost amber in the right light. I practiced smirking. Practiced stillness. Practiced the power of silence, as Callista called it, letting men fill the space just to impress you, just to break the unbearable mystery you wrapped around yourself. But there was a moment, a small one, when the mask slipped. It was Thursday. Week 1. We were learning the champagne line. This was what Callista called a luxury signal, something we could say that hinted we weren't easy to impress. It went like this: I never drink Prosecco. I only like champagne, darling. If it's not French, it's not real. We practiced saying it into a mirror. Over and over. With different expressions. Flirty. Dismissive. Playful. When it was my turn, I looked into my reflection and said it softly. Then again. Then again. And something cracked. Because I remembered the last time someone bought me champagne. It was our first anniversary, my ex-husband and I. We didn't have money for the real thing, but he brought home a bottle anyway. Said, close enough, and we laughed and drank it on the kitchen floor. I was barefoot and in pajamas. He kissed my shoulder like I was made of something delicate. It wasn't French. It wasn't real. But it was love. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, saying I needed to fix my lipstick. I stood in the stall and stared at my hands, shaking. Who was I becoming? Was this power? Or was this another costume to please another kind of man? But I didn't leave. Because part of me wanted to become her. The version of myself that didn't need memories to feel whole. The one who could walk into a bar and make the man who ghosted her regret it before he even knew why. So I stayed. And I studied. And when we went out that weekend for practical application, I wore red, like the woman in the ad. They called it a field test. Saturday night, week 2. The 10 of us were sent out into the world like newly trained predators in high heels. The instructions were clear. Choose a bar. Sit alone. Don't approach, attract. Use your posture, your gaze, your breath. Let the men come. Let them think it's their idea. Callista said to pick a name for the night. Something exotic, unattached to pain. Men don't deserve your real name until they earn it, she smirked. Until then you are the fantasy. I picked Isla. Samantha felt too raw, too stained with stories I didn't want to tell anymore. Isla had never cried in a grocery store aisle. Isla had never begged anyone to love her back. Isla had never sent an "Are you mad at me?" text or lain awake refreshing a message thread that would never light up again. Isla didn't need closure. Isla closed the door first. I wore a crimson wrap dress that clung like a secret and red lipstick so vivid it felt like armor. I walked into the bar like I was being filmed, slow, deliberate, as though the air parted for me. And strangely, people looked. I sat at the edge of the bar, not too far in, just like Callista taught. That spot where a man could spot you easily but would have to come to you. The bartender smiled. Waiting for someone? No, I said. But someone might be waiting for me. He raised an eyebrow. I turned away before he could answer. That was part of the training. Don't linger. Leave a trail of curiosity behind you. Within 20 minutes he appeared. Tan skin, a tailored coat, and that studied kind of confidence, the kind that suggested he knew exactly what he looked like. He ordered a bourbon neat. Glanced sideways. Then again. You look like you're in control of the whole room, he said. I smiled slow. Funny. I was just thinking the same about you. He told me his name was Colin. Something about his voice made me feel like I'd heard it before in another life, maybe. Or another version of myself. We talked for 20 minutes, maybe 30. The words were sugar-coated bait on both ends. I asked him where he grew up. He asked what perfume I was wearing. He told me I had a classic face which I pretended to blush at, though I'd rehearsed exactly how much eye contact to hold. I tilted my head slightly. He leaned in. I dropped my gaze, then brought it back up slowly. All of it scripted. And it worked. He asked if I wanted to get out of there. I declined, coy. I told him mystery was more powerful than immediacy. He said he liked that. Then he said something that froze the blood beneath my skin. You remind me of my ex. I laughed lightly. Dangerous thing to say to a woman in red. No, I mean it. He studied me a little too closely now. She took that same course, didn't she? The something bootcamp? You all have the same eyes. I blinked. Eyes? Not the color, he said. The look. Like you're watching yourself from the outside performing. My stomach nodded. Are you one of those course girls? The word girl stung more than it should have. Like we were playing dress-up. Like none of it was real. I didn't answer. I picked up my clutch and left. Not dramatically. Quietly. He called something after me, but I didn't hear it, or maybe I just didn't want to. Outside, the air hit like truth. I took off my heels after the first block. My feet throbbed, my mascara smudged. A man whistled from a car. I didn't flinch. I just kept walking. Barefoot. Red dress fluttering in the wind like a warning. It was supposed to feel like power. But I felt hollow. Like I had tricked someone into liking a version of me that didn't exist. And worse, I was starting to forget which version was me. The next morning, I found glitter on my collarbone. It caught the light when I turned my head in the mirror. I hadn't worn glitter. I hadn't wanted to sparkle. But there it was, a trace of the night before, clinging like a lie I forgot to scrub off. I stood at the bathroom sink for a long time, brushing my teeth with one hand and wiping at the shimmer with the other, furious at how stubborn it was. My eyes were still swollen, skin raw where I'd scrubbed the makeup away. But that glitter stayed. Mocking. Proof. I didn't go to class that day. Instead, I sat in my apartment and opened the divorce papers for the first time. The language was as cold as I'd expected. Division of assets. Non-contested. Marital property. It read like a list of terms and conditions I had once agreed to blindly. He hadn't written a note. Not even a post-it. After 10 years, not even sorry. There's this thing they don't tell you about loss, how it stacks. You think you're grieving one person, one event, but it all begins to collapse in on itself. My husband, Jason, my former self, even my mother's voice from when I was 13, saying, "Don't be too much, Samantha. Men don't like that. Too loud, too opinionated, too needy, too proud." That message had followed me like an echo. The boot camp didn't erase it, it just gave me new rules. A different version of too much. One men did like, until they didn't. That night, I received a message in the group chat. "Callista, ladies, final weekend coming. Be your fiercest self. Show the world what heartbreak made. You are predators now. Act like it." I stared at the screen, thumbs hovering. The others were sending heart emojis and fire symbols. Someone posted a mirror selfie with the caption, "Men are toys." I should have felt empowered. But something about it made me feel small. Like we were all still seeking approval, just from a different angle. Instead of chasing love, we were chasing attention. Same hunger, new costume. I finally typed. "Samantha, does anyone else feel like we're just hurting in reverse?" No one responded. 2 hours later, the message was deleted. Not just mine, the entire chat. Callista removed everyone. The group dissolved like smoke. I got an email that night from the course's assistant. Something cold and generic. "Due to emotional disharmony within the group, we are concluding the boot camp early. You are free to continue your journey individually. Remember, seduction is survival. Stay powerful." And just like that, it was over. The next day, I got dressed like a normal person. No lashes, no velvet. Just jeans and a soft sweater with a tiny hole in the sleeve. I went to the bookstore. I hadn't done that in months. It felt like waking up in someone else's life. I wandered aimlessly until a copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves caught my eye. I picked it up like it might answer a question I hadn't been brave enough to ask. A few feet away, a man in a wool coat and glasses caught my eye. Not in a seductive way. Not in the game. Just curious. He smiled. I smiled back, tired. He didn't say anything clever. He didn't try to impress me. Just nodded and kept browsing. And I stood there with the book in my hand thinking maybe that's what real power looks like. Not the power to get attention, but the power to decide you don't need it. The apartment was too quiet without the rush of getting ready. No perfume clouds. No curling iron hissing on the counter. No Spotify playlist titled Siren Mode. Just me, a mug of lukewarm tea, and the hum of the fridge kicking on every 20 minutes like it was trying to remind me I was still here. The red dress hung in my closet like a ghost. I hadn't washed it. Couldn't. The scent of that night was still stitched into the fabric, expensive bourbon, a stranger's cologne, desperation disguised as daring. It felt like a costume from a role I no longer wanted. I started cleaning. Not like dusting or picking up socks, I mean purging. I went through my drawers, my closet, every cabinet. I threw out lipsticks that promised danger, pushed all my fake lashes into a bag for donation. Deleted selfies where my eyes were half-lidded and my mouth curled into a smirk I didn't recognize anymore. And somewhere between dumping an empty contour palette and tossing a pair of heels I had bled in, I broke. I sat on the floor, back against the closet door, and cried into a t-shirt from my college years. One with a faded graphic and a tiny coffee stain. A shirt I used to wear when I was still her, still the version of me who thought strength meant softness, who laughed with her whole face, who loved recklessly and meant it. Where had she gone? I think I believed the boot camp would help me reclaim her. Instead, it taught me how to bury her better. I couldn't blame Callista entirely. She didn't invent the pain. She just dressed it up and gave it a weapon. Every woman in that room had arrived carrying their own brand of betrayal. She gave us structure, a performance, a way to feel like we were doing something with the ruins. But there's a difference between healing and armoring up. And the more I replayed that night with Colin, the way his smile shifted, the way he saw through me, the more I realized I wasn't seducing anyone. I was recreating my trauma in prettier packaging. That realization sat with me for days. Long after the boot camp ended, I kept expecting an aftershock, some final lesson, some next step. But it never came. Because no one tells you what happens after the game ends. You wake up. You eat cereal. You go to work. No one claps for your transformation. No one sees the war you waged beneath your skin. One afternoon, I walked past a cafe and saw one of the bootcamp girls sitting at a table with a man. She was laughing, flipping her hair, making eye contact with surgical precision. I caught her glance for a split second through the window. She froze. Then she smiled, not the seductive kind. The real kind. The kind that said, "I remember you." I nodded back. But I didn't go in. I walked 2 blocks, then ducked into a thrift store and bought a worn denim jacket that smelled like someone's attic in high school rebellion. I put it on over my sundress, looked in the mirror, and didn't try to tilt my head or pout. I just looked. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to perform being healed. I just wasn't anymore. Not fully. But enough to breathe differently. Enough to begin again, not as a goddess. Just as me. A few weeks passed. No more red dresses. No more champagne lines. No more reminders to text and then disappear. I archived the bootcamp emails, muted Callista's Instagram, and turned off notifications for the group's private forum, though no one was posting anymore. The silence there felt like the final proof none of us had walked out healed. We just left carrying different kinds of wounds. But real life has a way of demanding attention. Rent. Laundry. Groceries. The everyday friction that keeps you tethered. I started showing up to work earlier. Took longer walks without headphones. Read actual books again. Even started a therapy group for women who'd left controlling relationships. It was small, just 5 of us, but it felt real. No mantras. No mirrors. No glamour. Just raw honesty and shaking hands holding coffee cups. Still, something in me itched. Not in the way it used to, not the craving to be seen or wanted or chosen, but in that quieter way grief lingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unfinished. Like I'd walked out of a burning building and hadn't looked back to see what was left. So one Friday evening I did. I went back. Not to the loft where we trained, that lease was long gone, no trace of the boot camp on the door, but to the bar. That bar? The one with the heavy oak counters and warm lighting where I'd first tried on my mask like a weapon. Where Colin saw through me. I wore jeans. Sneakers. No makeup except a swipe of chapstick. I left my hair in its natural waves. The hostess offered me a table, but I asked to sit at the bar instead. I didn't expect to see him. I didn't even know if I wanted to. But there he was. Same spot. Same drink. Same quiet intensity. He looked older this time. Not in a bad way. Just more real. Less curated. He didn't see me at first. I ordered water, heart beating far louder than the moment deserved. And then he turned. Recognition bloomed slowly across his face, like a memory surfacing from a long dream. "You," he said. No judgment. Just surprise. Maybe curiosity. I nodded. "Me." He raised his glass. "Red dress." I smiled soft. "Retired." He chuckled, then gestured toward the empty stool beside him. "Can I buy you a drink?" I shook my head. No games tonight. Just conversation. That seemed to sit well with him. We talked not like characters, not like hunters and prey. Just 2 people who'd both, it turned out, been through their own private reckoning. He told me he'd dated a woman from the boot camp once. That it ended badly. That it made him wary. "There's a difference between confidence and calculation," he said. "But it gets blurry when you've been hurt." I nodded. Sometimes we think we're taking the power back, but really we're just putting on a new kind of mask. His eyes softened. "I think everyone's just doing their best not to break." And maybe that was the truth of it. I didn't stay long. We didn't exchange numbers. It wasn't that kind of night. As I stood to leave, he said, "You seem different now." I paused. "I am. Still a little broken. Just not trying to hide it anymore." Outside, the air was crisp and cool. I pulled my jacket tight, but not to cover anything, just to feel warm. Safe. Whole in a way I hadn't understood before. Healing wasn't a performance. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause or attention or 1,000 likes on a carefully curated post. It came quietly. In small, slow steps. In ordinary clothes. In conversations with no agenda. And I was starting to believe that was enough. It's strange, looking back now. Not because I regret it, though for a while I did. Deeply. I hated the woman I'd become in that red dress, hated how easily I'd confused power with performance. But now? Now I see it differently. Like an old photograph of a younger self, not shameful, just unfinished. I still have the journal I used during the boot camp. I found it last week while cleaning under my bed. It's full of mantras, some fierce, some hollow. One page says in bold Sharpie, "He who wants you silent is scared of your voice." Another written days later in smaller, Messier handwriting. What if I miss being soft? I remember writing that. Sitting on my floor, post-boot camp, red lipstick wiped clean, and wondering had I lost something I couldn't get back? But now I know softness isn't weakness. It's strength that doesn't need to shout. These days, my life isn't flashy. There's no room filled with mirrors and incense. No seductive walk I practice in front of the window. I go to work. I meet friends for brunch. I still flinch sometimes when I pass certain places, the street where Jason first kissed me, the bench where I waited 2 hours for my ex-husband on the night he forgot our anniversary. But the flinch fades faster now. Last month, I rejoined a yoga class I used to love. The instructor remembered me. She asked where I'd been. I told her, lost in a long detour. She smiled like she understood. After class, I walked home past a wine bar. In the window, a woman sat alone at the counter. Back straight. Perfect eyeliner. Wearing red. She reminded me of myself, or the version I once played. And part of me wanted to run in and say, you don't have to do this. You're already enough. But I didn't. Because maybe she needed to walk through her own fire. Maybe pretending to be powerful would lead her, like it did for me, to the realization that she didn't need to pretend at all. We all take the long way sometimes. I've started writing again. Not for anyone else. Just for me. Stories mostly. Little pieces of truth dressed as fiction. I write women who are flawed, angry, tender, real. Women who've been crushed and stitched themselves back together without gold lacquer or fanfare. Just threat and persistence. Last night, I went on a date. A real one. No script. No games. Just coffee and a rainy sidewalk walk after. He told me a dumb story about his dog and I laughed the way I used to, not to charm, just because I wanted to. At one point he reached for my hand and I didn't pull away. I didn't calculate how long to wait. I didn't check my reflection in a window to see if I looked mysterious enough. I just let him hold it. And when he said, "You seem like someone who knows who she is," I didn't deflect or downplay. I just said, "Yeah, I do now." Because I've been the woman crying in the bathroom. I've been the ghosted, the left, the forgotten. I've been the one pretending not to care while carrying every rejection like a stone in my chest. I've been the red dress fantasy and the red-eyed reality behind it. But now? Now I'm just Samantha. Still healing. Still messy. Still real. And maybe that's the most seductive thing of all.